Welcome back.
Welcome to Decision Space, the only show to take place right here, in the space between the turns in your favorite games. I'm Jake Friedman.
And I'm Brendan Hansen.
And this is the podcast about decisions in games.
And in today's episode, we're talking about Decision Space. Yes, this podcast. This is our annual episode in which Jake and I take a brief moment to just talk about the show, talk about where we've been, where we're going, and sort of reflect on what we feel we've accomplished and what we still want to accomplish with this podcast and with this conversation, with this community, with this endeavor. This has been I think a bright spot for me in the past few years, just for Jake and I to sort of take a minute and sort of say, hey, wow, we've really accomplished a lot and this is what we want to try to do. So we'll probably do some reflecting on the past. We might look forward to future games we might cover on the show, read out a couple listener comments. We'll talk about our 2024 community rankings at the end of the show, as promised, reveal some interesting news, and maybe some other stuff in this episode. So lots of cool tidbits. Don't go anywhere. Jake, where do you want to start?
Yeah,
it's a new year, new beginnings.
It's a new year, and I was going to say there's perhaps no podcast that likes talking about our podcast as much as Decision Space. Yeah, we love it.
It's true. If you want topical coverage of Decision Space is
dude, we are the source, and we actually have some breaking news today about the show, so stick around for that. Well, let's start here. We haven't recorded a podcast together in over a month, right? A month?
Yeah.
Because of
you multiplied.
Yeah, it was crazy. Having a son, it's been really crazy. It might not seem like a month, hopefully, because we had a couple of episodes ready to go that we sort of filled in with, but it's actually been a long time, probably the longest since we started doing this show a long time ago, that we've gone without chatting about games. So just want to acknowledge that and say, how's it going? How was your break? Have you played any games? Did you get any games?
Yeah, my break was amazing. We went on a family trip across the country to visit Oregon, where a lot of my family lives. And, I have two kids. So I have a 3-year-old and a baby, a 10-month-old. You have a real baby now. I can't say I have a 10-month-old. It's very different in some ways. He's standing up, Jake. He's pulling himself up on stuff. So you soon will see. But my gaming has been light. I've mostly been playing a ton of Magic the Gathering Draft on my phone. Longtime listeners of the show will know that sort of Jake and I played a lot of Magic was a formative game for each of us. I took a long break. Jake's also taken a long break. I'm saying break for Jake, even though I think in Jake's mind he's quit forever. I thought that too. And now as of late, I play a lot of Magic.
Definitely not.
There's so many good decisions.
It's funny that you say that because my mom is here now helping with the baby, which is amazing. She just came in yesterday and she was talking about Christmas gifts, and I have some adult cousins and they're brothers, and she said that she gets the Magic cards and they still want Magic cards as if that's like a thing for kids. And I was like, that's for adults too, Mom. I still play Magic, Mom.
You're like, Mom, did you get me any Magic cards?
Yeah, I was like, who else would love Magic cards? Yeah. This guy right here. Who's got awesome. 2 thumbs as an adult dad and loves Magic the Gathering?
That's awesome.
This guy.
I'll throw 2 more in. Beyond that, games I played, my 3-year-old now knows how to play rock, paper, scissors. Been playing a lot of rock, paper, scissors.
That's hilarious. Because you are like the biggest proponent of rock, paper, scissors that I know, certainly. So it's like you're like imprinting, so early.
Well, we have a book about rock, paper, scissors, which is cool. It like turns it into a fairy tale sort of. But it's been tough to get him not to just say either one, I'm going to go paper, so you go, and then says when I should go, or 2, you should throw this. So we've been talking some about mind games and keeping surprises, but he's mostly there. And then we also randomly have started playing the game of The Floor is Lava. I did not teach him this game. Yeah, my wife didn't teach him this game. Somehow he's learned it. So I've been playing a lot of The Floor is Lava, but no formal board games.
That's an incredible game.
Yeah. Just organically still in the ether, just coming out.
I didn't realize The Floor is Lava started that early. I wonder how we're, but hey, that's awesome.
I was shocked. But
here it is. We're already at The Floor is Lava. Okay. Yeah. It's crazy that you could play the floor is lava and rock paper scissors is still more abstract. Decisions are crazy. That's
Yes, yeah, yep.
um that's awesome. And how is Magic Foundations?
Magic Foundations is incredible. So this is a set that is sort of a. It's going to be. They say it's sort of a. It's legal for 5 years in standard, whatever that is. Sort of the core way that you play. Basically, it means
That's
they.
like the
they
SpongeBob set, right?
oh my gosh, yeah.
They're the SpongeBob format.
Yeah, exactly. My
Okay.
legendary net. No, this is just a core set that that they're trying to sort of say this is Magic today, and it's supposed to be a return to basics. And in some ways, it feels that way. So it's a really good onboarding set for someone who maybe hasn't played in a long time or wants to play for the first time. But it's also just rife with interesting decisions. I primarily play booster draft, and I feel like I'm always building interesting decks, making interesting gameplay decisions. I've maybe played 40 drafts and I am not bored of it. It is just fantastic. Magic has so many cool decisions. We should do another episode on it someday, but not this one. How about you?
Yeah.
Have you managed to play any games, which would be
Um
a Herculean feat with a
no, I
input?
have not gotten any games to the table. I did get a Christmas present game from myself, and I really shouldn't have,
Yeah.
but I got Mistborn, the deck building game. So that will be the first one I get to the table, and I think it'll be doable because it has a solo mode and also a cooperative mode. I was, and then it also has a competitive mode, which I don't think I'll have any use for the time being. But I was thinking, I was talking to my wife like, oh, I'd really like to, getting closer. Like we're getting there to the, I don't know that I would ever be able to, or I certainly wouldn't be able to play a game straight through with uninterrupted, but to the point where we could have something set up on the table and kind of piece our way through it over a couple of days or over a day. So I was thinking about that, and then Bridget said that she might be interested in trying with me. So we will see. Once I get Mistborn to the table, I'll definitely report back. Um,
And
I
you're a
wasn't
fan
gonna.
of
Yeah, go ahead.
you're so Mistborn is based on the Brandon Sanderson novels, and you're a fan of those novels. It's also
Yes.
designed by John D. Clare, and you've played John D. Clare games, so
Yeah,
this seems like it'll be a hit for you.
I played John D. Clare games, but though to be honest, I don't know that
Loved
I
them.
loved them.
Yeah,
The one I can remember is the giant. I don't remember what it's called, like Dead Reckoning. I think
yeah, yeah.
is
The pirate game.
yeah, and I didn't like that one. It was just too long and too, kind of like leaning into kind of like an American style
Swashbuckling, loose.
swashbuckling
Yeah,
dice rolling thing for my taste for a long game. I think it was, pulled off what it was aiming for, and I just wasn't the right audience for it. I'm not
yeah.
sure that I played other John D. Clare games.
Space Base.
Oh, Space Base, which I
Yeah,
like. Okay, so
yeah,
50-50. But yeah, so it's cool to have an IP that I'm really interested in, really like, with some real design chops behind it and a real, uh, you know, independent board game studio in Brotherwise Games putting out. I'm really excited to try it.
yeah.
And
That's awesome.
I wasn't gonna talk about this, but because you mentioned playing Magic on your phone, one thing I've been doing a lot of between feedings and changings and feedings and changings and soothings and feedings and changings is whip out my phone and messing around with the Pokemon trading card
Oh,
game app,
nice.
which is it's a really interesting thing. I would stop short of calling it a great game. It feels more like sort of just a kind of like a card collection. Like that's kind of the driving thing. You're just kind of collecting cards. You get to open 2 packs a day. So it's got a lot of things that just like you could just open it up and do something to like get some new cards or whatever. It does have a card game battle mode, which could be single player or player versus player. It's not very robust yet with just this really early sets of cards, and I would say the decisions in it are very scant to none. There are
These are
some.
you play with smaller decks than you normally would,
It's
right?
it's
So
essentially like Marvel snapped
okay,
the collectible card game. I think it's really interesting
okay,
for that, right? It's taken an established trading card game, the Pokemon game,
yep.
and put it down to a 5-minute
Said
play
how small
experience.
can we make this game?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
And that makes it something that's like really great to play in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
If you have 5 minutes, you can bust out, play a game, try and like work on a whatever, the little collection, the little goals, daily goals, weekly goals, or whatever that all those collectible card games have. So I've been having fun with it. It's been like an enjoyable way to pass the time at 3 a.m. And I'll be interested to see if I think the next like big set of cards is coming out for it in at the end of January. So it'll be interesting to see if like that opens up the actual space and turns it into like more of a card game for people who want a rich kind of decision space in their game as well.
Cool. That's awesome.
And then I've just been playing a ton on Board Game Arena with our European listeners at 3 a.m. or whatever it is. So that's been really fun. I've been playing a lot of Twa, a lot of Feast for Odin, so much Rift Force. I got pretty highly ranked in the arena season on Rift Force this time around, and it's honestly been a total blast. Having it's just such I love having async games, and when I have to like hold the baby upright for 10 minutes after a feeding at 3 a.m. It's like such a treat to just be able to take a few turns in these like great games. Feel
It's
really
so
lucky to have Board Game Arena available right now.
It's so funny because you talking about this reminds me of when my first son was first born, and I could say like, "Oh, we were working on King Domino." I remember being awake in the middle of the night working on our King Domino episode. I could get in a match during one feeding in the middle of the night on Board Game Arena, stuff like that. So I can say, everyone's time with having a baby is different. But in this period of time that you are heading into, Jake, is the time in which Maya and I played Cascadia over 100 times. So you
Dang.
could be headed into a halcyon age of board games.
Maybe. Yeah, I'll have to try and see if I could get Bridget like in on something like that. Um, do you think this is totally off topic, but do you think I was like getting into a game like that, like playing a game of King Domino where you're making decisions and then trying to go to sleep immediately after? Do you think that's like bad sleep habit? Like, do you think that keeps you up?
I don't know.
my
It's a good
friend was asking me
question.
this, it's totally just
I
no,
think that
Bridget
it can
Bridget
be.
was wondering. She was like, you're just like playing those games. Like, is that keeping you up?
Ooh, I think that it depends on. Obviously, depends on your brain. I think for me, waking up, making a few decisions, thinking about the game and the decisions as I fall back asleep is a very effective strategy. Typically,
Yeah,
if I
for
want to
sleep.
keep playing and I
For
can't
sleep.
stop, yeah,
Yeah, that's bad.
it can be rough. Yeah, for sure. But overall, I think I can usually glide back into sleep nicely, especially with pure baby exhaustion. That's
Yeah.
a that's a
Yeah, it
important part of
hasn't
the
been too
strategy.
hard getting back to sleep. But the only time I really noticed it like negatively impacted me was like I had made like a mistake, like a play mistake or something, which is something that can happen at 3 a.m. And then I was
Sure.
just like went back to sleep. I was like, dang it. Like, I have to like sit with that for like 10 minutes before I fall asleep. Anyway,
Totally.
yeah. So that's what we've been up to over break. Should we get into the meat of this topic, Brendan, and talk about our show? Now that
Yeah.
we've talked about ourselves.
Yes. Now that we've talked about ourselves for what the first fifth quarter of the episode, let's talk about decision space. Let's do it.
Heck yeah.
Okay. So,
Selflessly, we will venture into this topic.
okay, where do you want to start, Jake? Do you want to start with reflecting on the past?
Yeah,
Do you want to?
I
Okay.
think yes. Let's talk about last year on the show. Anything we thought went particularly well, anything we thought went particularly poorly. I probably got one in each category.
Okay.
But first, just like an overall stat, I think last year we hit almost exactly 100,000 downloads, like just over. It was like a
Cool.
hundred and thousand, 102,000 or something like that.
Okay.
And I think the year before we had hit 103,000. So we like
Okay.
were so close to matching or surpassing our 1 year benchmark. I do think we did less episodes overall. Maybe, on a per episode basis, we might have just like inched just ahead of last year. But in terms of overall reach and listenership, we have pretty much tread water over the past year.
We're kind of in a sustaining phase.
Right, which I think is not horrible. It's obviously we wish we were kind of have experiencing exponential growth. That would be the goal. That would be the ideal situation. But I think once we're grateful for our audience, right, and to capture at whatever that is, like 4,000 downloads every couple of weeks. Um, that's amazing. And to keep an audience like that, or you lose some and gain some, I think that's really cool. So I don't want to overlook that maintaining once you've reached a certain size gets harder and harder. And I think we've done a good job of that. At the same time, looking forward, it's definitely something I want to, make a priority to try and build on however possible in the year ahead.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of it's tough because when we first started the show, for the first year or so, maybe the first 8 months, we had a very small, modest audience, right? And we sort of knew we were in this building phase. We were finding our voice. We were figuring out what we wanted the show to be, what we wanted to talk about. And then we kind of found our stride and we started to see some real growth. And we quickly, I would say, quadrupled or maybe pentupled what our downloads were. And at that time, right, the base is small. So you can pentuple, not into some wild sky high numbers. But that felt really good. And it was really affirming and validating. And then in our second year, we sort of kept growing and approached, we weren't sort of reaching into to regularly having 1,000 people listen to our episode. Which we have done and are in now, and that really happened in our third year, that major growth year. The first year we were nominated for Board Game Geek Awards. I think when we started to really understand what the show was and how we could sustain the show itself, right? We started off with this wild pace where we were doing all these deep dives and just talking about games that we knew really well, that we'd played as board gamers, and wanted to have conversations about. And then we kind of settled into okay, we cannot keep this up because our entire life is not dedicated to playing board games, so that'd be great. But we can do other things. We have lots of other ideas we want to explore. And in my mind, Jake, last year, we were trying to figure out we started Decision Space during the COVID-19 pandemic, right? It's hard. I
Right.
have to say that for our audience now, right? Like a lot of our early listeners would just, I think, inherently know that that's sort of when we started the show. But now it's been long enough that our lives have meaningfully changed, right? I've had 2 kids. You've had a kid. We started during the
That's still so
pandemic.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So, our households have, we've added we've doubled in size between the two of us almost
We've both
in terms of
switched
households.
jobs,
We've
right?
both switched jobs. Yeah. At one time. Um, I finished a grad degree. You finished a degree, or was that during your last podcast?
I finished no, I guess so. Yeah,
Yeah. You
well,
finished it right during
I
the start of
graduated
it,
in
right?
2020, so
I think right
it
at
right
the
around it.
beginning.
Maybe right at
Yeah.
the beginning, yeah.
So that's a lot of change for both of us. And I think in my mind last year, Jake, this in 2024, we made some incredible episodes, but we also were sort of trying to figure out how to keep the show going with the scope that it's at and make it fit and work in our lives well. And in my eyes, I think Mission, we did that. And
Yeah.
it worked really well. And we've proven that we have a sustainable model, that we have interesting things to say, that we're not going to run out of topics. We're not going to run out of interesting games to cover and talk about. We're not going to run out of ideas or new angles. There is still a lot more to learn. And I think that's the most exciting takeaway for me out of 2024. Right? If you have a sustaining year where it's sort of like, well, we just did the same thing and we kind of talked about the same things and it was just the same, that's boring. I don't think
Right.
either of us are all that interested. But you and I in the past year, I feel like we talked about a ton of things. We learned about a lot of different things in games. We just had interesting conversations. The Some standout episodes for me are things like the Burgle Bros episode, just kind of the connection to why that game didn't necessarily succeed. The rules episode that we did where we talked about the sort of different types of rules that exist in games at all, I thought was awesome, and sort of this like treatise on that. And we did it in a way that we haven't done before, which was cool. We covered Ego this year, which was neat. We'd never covered a pre-release game before, and I think that worked well and was well received. And importantly, both of us, I felt good about it. It's not
Yeah.
like we were just doing it for the sake of doing it. We were interested in the game. We wanted to play the game and talk about it. So these are all neat things that came out of last year, and I could keep going, but I wanna let you sort of respond to some of the things I was
Yeah.
saying and
No,
riff on the air too.
I mean, I really like, oh, how you frame that, and I think big changes meant also like some of the external things became more difficult, right? We didn't want when we became more busy outside of the show, we didn't want to like let the show quality drop, and I don't think it did, right? I think
Yeah,
we did almost the same amount of episodes, and I think we did the same high quality episodes that we've ever done. Maybe slightly less robust notes, slightly less preparation, which was just kind of inevitable for how
yeah,
much external stuff was going on. But I don't think the quality of the show meaningfully declined. But I do think we sort of, I used to do more promoting the show, right? Like
yep,
sharing links in different other podcast discords or Facebook groups, places where, the hosts are like gracious enough to allow it. Um, posting more on like the board game Reddit, and trying to comment enough so that my posts get left up after I post them. Um, and I think some of that is kind of some of the only ways we really have to get new audiences. So if that's happening less, that's obviously going to hurt the show in terms of overall listenership. And I think when I look at it's tough, like because when I look at so we basically from 2021 to 2022 we tripled from 20,000 downloads to 60,000 downloads, and then we went from 60,000 to 100,000, right? So it was just like a straight up curve, and then to go from 100,000 to 100,000, it's just even though it's maintaining, it just feels a little bit like, oh, we really hit a speed bump there. And I think it's important to kind of remember actually we put out a ton of great episodes, and we actually that's just as good as the year previous. It
yeah.
just doesn't have
Feel
this
that way.
it just doesn't feel that way because of, and some of that is like weird cognitive bias of our brains that I just like look at this chart, and even though it's, just as high as the year previous, it feels like it's like cratering off the cliff, and that's not at all what actually happened.
Yeah. Jake, I think this year, 2024, well, not this year, last year, 2024, maybe was our year of heading, we've moved more into game design and talking overtly about game design than we
Yeah,
ever had.
definitely.
We hosted the Decision Space Jam with Aurora, and we did two of those actually. One,
Yep.
I think we've learned a lot from both of those in different ways. What's feasible, what works in our lives, how time consuming hosting design jams can be. But I think also with the first one, how rewarding it can be and how fruitful the conversations, especially in our Discord, were. So that was a really cool innovation as well. I think you and I both, have tried to, when you think about a podcast, right, you have to think somewhat about the audience. And maybe we've done not our best job in this episode. We've been talking about ourselves a lot, and it's a little indulgent just talking about decision space in general. But I
It's gonna
think
be different this year after this.
yeah, a subset. Well, and the subset of our audience who cares about the show, I think on some level probably cares about us in our lives, and
Totally.
us in our lives impact the show. And but anyway, we're normally trying to stick to a message, provide sort of a coherent take that is structured, has clean takeaways, etc. And I think that with that focus, sometimes there's been a degree of, well, we don't want to talk too much about design because our core audience doesn't really care about design. They just care about board games and playing games in general. And I think this year we've sort of seen our audience is really broad. We have subset of our audience who is really interested in design, a subset of our audience who would like us to just cover the hotness because there's a certain group of people who just listens to podcasts because they want to hear about new games they should buy. And I've certainly listened to podcasts in that mode for a long time. And there's a subset of people who likes our analytical deep dives. They're not going to play the games. They want to hear us talk about them and see what they can glean and learn either for their own design purposes or just for how they think about games. And all of these are sort of awesome subsets of our audience that make up the room full of people, 1,000+ people who show up every week in our, virtual auditorium to listen, which is awesome. And I think I'm starting to be less shy about sort of saying this is an episode for that part of the room, right? This is
Yeah.
our design focused episode. And that's just put on our design hats and we're just going to lean into design. And I think as we head towards 2025, more of that is okay, right? Like we could just do the thing,
I I
lean
think that
into it.
I think we've been a little scared at times, but the data definitely doesn't bear out
Yeah,
that those episodes are less popular. And if
yeah,
anything, our data actually shows from the year that our least popular episodes are the single game deep dive. So that's something we've thought a lot about too. And I think what's happening with that is a lot of people see it, the episode in their feed and say like either I haven't played that game, I'd like to play it before listening, and maybe I'll come back to it sometime, and maybe they do, maybe they don't, um, or I just don't. I'm just not interested in that game, which is totally fine and valid. I'm not sure that I want to listen to an hour long podcast about a game that I'm not interested in. Of
yeah,
course, we're picking these games, somewhat strategically, mostly because they're games we want to play, but also because we think there's something interesting from a decision space lens. So, we're not putting shows out about games we don't think are worth people's time, but I don't begrudge anybody that either. And I think one of the strengths from our show early on is in how focused we try to be on an episode, right? We're trying to jump right into it, get into here's our rating for the game, boom, right off the bat. And now we get into the history and discussion
yeah,
without much of a preamble. And that's something that a lot of people like about Decision Space. But I think it also, at times, is something that hurts us because people know they're not getting anything else out of this episode if it's a game that they're not interested in. So I think there's opportunity there to um, try new things. Kind of
yeah.
the deep dives aren't going anywhere, but one thing looking forward is we're going to try to listen to our audience and add something for everybody in every episode. So whether that's if we're covering Mexica, which is a game we'll be covering coming up soon, then instead of just 1 hour on Mexica, the structure may be more like 45 minutes on Mexica, but starting with Brendan and I both giving our top 5 list of Kramer and Kiesling games. So that, maybe you don't want to listen to the second half, but hey, I still want to click in on this episode to hear that first 15-minute discussion of their top 5 Kramer and Kiesling games. Something
Yeah.
like that. And then you don't have to stick around if you don't want to. But we and our all important metrics know that you are there paying attention to our humble little podcast.
Oh man. And what if you listened and you realized that Mexica is the best Kramer and Kiesling game?
Right. Exactly. I think that I I mean, this is optimistically speaking, but I think that, there's a chance that somebody clicks in on it and then realize, "Oh wait, maybe I'm enjoying this podcast even if I didn't think I was interested in Mexico after that hearing that. Maybe now I am and I'll stick with it." That would be the ideal goal.
Or maybe you hear that it's actually Renature, and then you go listen to the Renature episode.
Right.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, I love that idea, Jake. We should definitely do that. And I think that's our next episode, right? We're gonna cover Mexico and do this top 5 Kramer and Kiesling games at the start. Let's just do that.
Okay, let's do it. Yeah,
Let's do
sounds
it.
great.
Okay. Done. Decided. Okay. Um,
Sorting things out live.
Jake, you
Oh
said
wait, can
something
I?
else to me. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, um, I just wanted to touch on the design jam because I think that
Mm,
was one of the biggest stumbling blocks last year. So I just wanted to say that. I think the first design jam went awesome. And we had a bunch of wind in our sails from that. We were really optimistic and excited about doing the design jam, and we just jumped in too early to a second one. So what ended up happening with that jam is some people gave incredible feedback so a lot of people entered. A lot of people designed really cool uh, 18 card games, and some people provided a ton of awesome feedback to a lot of folks and then received no feedback back themselves. So that's just really disappointing. And I equally to blame, more so as it's sort of our show that's putting this on. So I just felt really bad for those folks. Um, it's still sort of on my bucket list to find time when I can to get back and play some of these games and give some quality feedback to match the feedback that I got on my own game. So that was just disappointing. So that's something we're rethinking moving forward. It seems like the biggest difference between the two jams is that one of them, people were able to play them solo, and the other one did not have that sort of solo requirement to it. And I think we were just naive to the huge difference in barrier of getting games tested when it's a two-player game versus when it's a solo game. Because a lot of those solo games, people are just they were like rolling right, so people would just play on their phone, right? Like just get a
Sure.
screenshot and mark it up on their phone. Don't even need to print anything out. This required printing and cutting cards and finding something else to play with. And I think we are just naive, frankly, to how difficult that would be to get these games tested. So I don't know that we're going to be done doing design jams. I think it's fun. It's something that I hope we continue in some way, but I think we'll just be a lot more intentional and strategic about the way we put them together, the way we write the rules, and then what kind of testing will be possible, and also kind of the length of time we give for it. Maybe it's something we do like one this year and it's 6 months or something, a whole long runway where there's lots of opportunity to play and test and collaborate and revise. I don't know. So
Yeah.
more on that to come. But I just wanted to mention that as something that is a real opportunity for, I think, improvement for our show.
Totally. No, thank you, Jake. I think in general, this is an area too where, as we've moved into talking more about design and wanting to do more design focused things, right? The show is Decision Space is always going to be about decisions and games. That's just the beginning and end. But I think you and I both have just a real desire to think about, talk about, and practice game design. So that should come into the conversation more. And whether that's through Decision Space Jam or whether that's embarking on our own. You pitched a pie in the sky idea to me, Jake, at one point before your baby was born. And I said, let's talk about this after your baby is born. And I love the idea. You got chutzpah, but it's a big idea, which is, us designing a game and releasing it together, either trying to find a publisher for it, pitching it, working on it to completion, or going the sort of Kickstarter route and crowdfunding a game together that sort of, I think, reflects both of our shared tastes that we've explored on the show. And you had said doing that in 2025, which I thought was wow.
I still think it's cool. I
It's
think we could do
cool.
it.
It's very cool.
What if I design a game and you design a game and then we develop each other's games or
Oh, that's
something?
interesting.
I don't know. Anyway, that's
That's
something
a really cool idea.
I think it's cool. And then it could be like one of those, if it was like a Kickstarter, and maybe, and it also, I should say, this doesn't have to be, deluxe box, crazy component, $100 thing. This could be
No.
more of the print and play variety where it's like really basic components, maybe for like a published version, but also maybe kick in $5 and you can have the files, something like that, right? That's kind of what I have in mind if we want to go kind of a Kickstarter route for the first ever uh, Decision Space as a publisher game. And I think that
Or
could feasibly be something that happens, if not
okay,
in
I
this
mean,
year. And we have to
I
get
will
we'd have to get going.
I will concede that that is absolutely the most feasible version of this idea that I've heard yet. But I think there's a middle ground too, in which we spend a little bit more time, do a few episodes and then do something that either, we aim for traditional publishing path or crowdfunding, not $100 blinged out. Why am I buying this mini of Jake in my
Wait,
box?
no, I actually
Repainted.
love that. Wait, that's an option.
But
Jake and Brendan
like,
plushies, Bitewing Games
oh my
did.
gosh. Did they really? That's sweet.
They did
Of
Kinesia
Kinesia?
plushie, yeah.
Only Kinesia could get a plushie. Maybe our decision space people. I don't know how
Maybe we should
plushy he
try and
is.
get a T-shirt going first.
No, but like, a more middle of the road. But anyway, it's an idea that I think is of interest to both Jake and I. We're
Would you
not
be
committing to
interested in
anything.
a game designed by the hosts of Decision Space? Like, let us know.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So, Jake, what do you want to do next? That was all the past, a little bit of the future, actually. A little
Yeah,
bit.
I think let's go to the future.
Okay,
We're
let's
doing
go
the
to the
present.
future.
We're living in the
We're
present.
living in the
We
present.
started with the present.
This is now. Yeah.
This is now. Yeah, so let's do the future. So we dropped like the mega bombshell breaking news.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a
We
decision space news flash.
so the very exciting news is we have invited longtime contributors and many time guests on this show, Paul Solomon and Pete Wissinger, to become regular co-hosts along with us. So you can expect to hear their voices much more on the Decision Space podcast. I'm incredibly excited about this. If you don't know Pete and Paul, I can kind of introduce them together because they actually have a lot of shared uh, uh, identities. They're both educators, which helps to explain why they're so good on the podcast at expressing ideas clearly and teaching us things about games intelligently. They're both game designers and both published game designers. Well, at least Pete has signed games that are coming out imminently, I happen to know, and just really, really smart game creators and people who love to think about games and really align, I think, with some of the goals of our show. So Pete originally reached out to me recognizing that there might be need of a little bit of extra capacity in creating the show since I now have a baby, an infant that I'm taking care of. Brendan, you have two, which we've already alluded to, and also have this new job and with increased responsibility and demands on your time. So we thought about it and thought that's something that's worth trying out.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this. We've already put together a planning doc that I will say is more extensive than we've had for the show in a long time, taking a look at future episodes that we might cover. And the cool thing about this, in addition to just having more a broader diversity of voices and perspectives, is that Paul and Pete just have played different games than us, have different interests than Jake and I. And I think that there's some areas that Jake and I are interested in and have dipped our toes in, whether it's trick taking games or tiling games or developing games, that will never be at the level of expertise that Pete and Paul are already at, and can just bring that expertise to the show right now and level you up from the perspective of learning about these topics that are sort of things that Jake and I are also interested in too. So I'm really excited for those conversations. And I think that there are standout examples of Paul and Pete being on the show in the past where we've had really interesting takeaways. So I hope y'all are excited for that. We've upgraded everyone's mics.
Yeah.
Including my own, so we should all be on the same board and match. And you will still hear a ton of Jake and I, and you'll also hear Paul and Pete too.
Yeah. And I would say don't take this news as Brendan or I are stepping away from the show in any
Yeah.
way. I'm still planning to edit every single episode. And I, at least as of now, I think the idea we're going to be basically feeling everything out now. Are we going to have some episodes that have all four people on it? Possibly. Is that too many voices on a single podcast episode? Probably, but we might see how that goes. Um, and then there will probably be episodes that are probably many more episodes that have three people on them, and then Brendan and or at least now the plan would be that either Brendan or myself remains on at least one of us on each episode. We're not quite willing to just hand the reins over totally to Paul and Pete right off the bat. This is kind of a probationary period for them, I would say. So we'll have to reevaluate and see if we want to keep them or not after 90 days. But
90 episodes.
90 episodes. But yeah, so I mean, I'm super excited, and it's just been really fun kind of creating the list of upcoming episodes with them and how uh it's just like new energy coming to the show. We've done almost 200 episodes now, and it's just going to be really nice to have fresh perspectives, fresh ideas, and helping to create the show, the episodes, and also kind of the concepts and notes behind them. So couldn't be more excited to have these fan favorite guests take a more just take on a bigger role and be on episodes much more often.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, with that, there's two things we need to do from here, Jake, or get to do. Three things. Three things. One, I have a list of games that I am potentially interested to cover on the show in the future, and I would love for us to take the tactics of we just do a quick rundown and you say yes or no. Like, are you
Okay.
interested at all? Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that sound good? That
Yeah.
sounds good. Okay. We also have listener comments to read. We have a pair of them just reflecting on decision space in general. I asked for them and they came back. So I want to read them on the show. And then we have our community rankings. So from this point, choose your own adventure. Jake gets to choose. What are we doing next?
Let's do. Well, we said the community ranking would be last. So let's keep that
Okay.
last. I say let's do the yes or no game.
Okay. Yes or no game. Whew, okay. So I have assembled a list of games that pass all of the criteria for covering on the show, which is either you and I have played it a bunch already, even though it's available to play virtually, or it would be worth it.
Okay.
So there's
Okay.
no real criteria. Okay. Guild of Merchant Explorers,
Yes.
Haggis.
I'm going to say no, with the caveat that like that's totally a Pete episode, right? Like
Yeah.
so
Oh
so
wow.
I feel like that's an episode that I could maybe like not be on. But
Dang, this is
that
amazing.
that could be a great episode for the show. So do I say
Cool.
yes or no to that?
Oh, you say no, and then we edit Pete in here going yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay, Scout.
Yes.
High Society.
Yes.
Age of Innovation.
Yes.
The Carl Chudik's innovation.
No. But for
Okay.
somebody else.
Maybe with a roar.
Yeah, right, yeah. And
Yeah.
also with those new guests, that doesn't mean other friends of the show are not going to be on. I think, we still have Jared waiting the wings when we need a Knizia expert, or Tyler when we need a Stefan Feld expert, Aurora when we need a strategist guru for a game. I think I would love to have Jamie on again when we need kind of a gaming industry guru
Yeah.
and also design guru in his own right. So, expect other guests. And we also have to have our good friend Bill Varianor back on again very soon. So yeah, there'll be other people dropping by the show from time to time, in addition, for sure, as well.
Arboretum.
Yes.
Okay, Dead Cells.
I'll say no for now, but I don't know. I just don't know anything about the game other than it's based on a video game.
Antoine
And
Bauza.
yeah, I mean that's exciting. So maybe,
I was
maybe,
shocked to see that's
maybe.
available on BGA.
Yeah.
The Bloody Inn.
No.
That's by y'all people who did the
And maybe it's
game did
cool. I just
Twa.
don't,
They did the Twa.
Okay.
Okay, Ethnos.
Where can we
Oh,
play Ethnos?
on BGA.
It's on BTA?
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Has
yeah.
it always been there?
I think it was an alpha. Is it a
Okay.
yes or a no?
I think yes.
Yes. Okay. Beer and bread.
No.
Stone Spire Architects. And before you say yes or
No.
no, no, before you say yes or no, this is by it's by the same person who did Cartographers, and it has the similar scoring, and you're laying out cool dungeons. Peter Paul, help!
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not that. I wasn't that big on cartographers.
God, duh. Okay, Resist. This is that David Thompson single player game that I was telling you about.
I want to play the witches one.
Oh my gosh.
Witchcraft. I
So
just
is
don't
that
like
that's a
I'm not big on
maybe?
war theme. So I would say probably no, but maybe.
Okay. Lorenzo Il Magnifico.
Um I don't know. No.
Italian, no. Okay. The Red Cathedral?
Uh no. Yes.
Okay, cool. That will be the longest prep we've ever done because we prepped that episode for last year,
Oh yeah, wait.
2024, and then we never covered it.
How did we prep it?
We played it like 10 times.
Oh yeah, it's on
It's
Yukata.
on Yukata. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that game rocks.
Awesome. Yeah, I thought it was pretty sweet. So that's our list.
Awesome. And I forgot one other. And hey, that don't go to the bank to cash your check on us covering those games or not covering them yet.
Yeah.
I forgot to give one other update for new things about the show, which is that in addition to new microphones, I've requested that everybody is getting new webcams. Well, not Brendan and I, but the folks who Pete and Paul will be getting new webcams so that we can do more with video this year. So what I think that is going to mean, if all goes according to plan, would be that we will paywall video podcasts in some capacity or another. We will keep the off the record stuff and early video releases for our as Patreon exclusive content. However, the episode in video I want to try and get up on YouTube and hopefully also on Spotify's new podcast thing where that they have a platform that seems like specifically for video podcasting. So more to come on that. But that's something I'm going to be looking at in the coming, days, not weeks. So maybe even this episode will be up in video for all to see.
Awesome. Okay. So that brings us to our listener comments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
So I asked two questions, Jake. One of my questions was basically, why do you listen to Decision Space? And the other was, what's something you learned about games listening to the show? So both of these are responses to those questions. Do you want to take the first one?
Yeah. Okay. So this is by the aforementioned Bill Varianor. And this answers question number 2. And his comment was, I've learned through the exploration of games on the show how to frame a discussion about the experience of playing them that begins with excellent terminology. Decision Space gives me tools and terms that let me discuss in ways that I'd never imagined before listening to the show.
Awesome.
Very nice
Okay,
comment.
cool. Very
And
kind.
I think I just have to say, I don't know. It's interesting that the kind of decision space lexicon, the different terms that we use to talk about decision space, that wasn't as much of a premeditated concept as people might assume. I think that's just something that kind of came about naturally by really diving deep and exploring the topic of decision space in games. Um, in finding that there's not really great terminology widely used here. So we've seen that comment from other folks too, and it's incredibly rewarding to know that our show has in some way helped improve people's discussion about games with their friends or other folks outside of listening to the show. Just so cool and rewarding to know that.
And we've also seen the calls for, could you all just like organize all these terms and create a lexicon or do an episode about that?
And
And
don't it did that isn't I think that exists.
no,
I think it does.
where
I think Varianor has it
is
somewhere.
working?
I think I think so. But it maybe not. Maybe don't quote me on that. But I think that's something. Maybe a 2025 goal of putting something up on the website that is just like a simple glossary of terms frequently used on decision space.
That could be a playing board games at night, baby delirium fog memory. But if not, I'm very excited. Okay. This next comment is from Benjamin Ing. At first, it was to learn about game design. I only listened to the What We Talk About episodes and selected deep dives. After I'd listened to all of those and found that I enjoyed y'all's vibes, oh, thank you for enjoying our vibes. I started listening to other episodes and found that even when I didn't necessarily learn anything revolutionary, just hearing y'all approach, analyze, and experience games was useful and entertaining. The concept and terminology around decision spaces was the biggest thing I've learned from the show. Oh, thanks, Benjamin. Another longtime listener and supporter of the show. Super appreciate y'all jumping in and giving us some listener comments to read out. We might do that too, more in 2025. I think it's nice bringing in additional feed perspectives when we can. So I encourage listeners who are listening now to join our Discord. Invariably, Jake and I might put up a question that's a call. Maybe it'll be about a specific game or a specific topic, asking for comments, and maybe we'll read yours out on the show.
Yeah. And just another shout out to our Discord as like a matchmaking tool on Board Game Arena. I've just been utilizing that feature so much of the looking for games channel and just finding, not even just one off games, but partners to play repeated series of games to really dive deep. I've been playing, learning from experts at Race for the Galaxy, exploring Castle Combo deeply with another listener and friend of the show, and and more. So it's just been, just for me personally, like what a treat to be able to be playing these games with people I know and then can, continue to talk about them with after the fact and during, and not just, against a random matchmaking opponent who's probably very nice, but on Board Game Arena, those matches tend to be a lot less chatty and than you might want. So if you're expecting a kid anytime soon, hop in our Discord and you'll really come to love that feature.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, I too love playing games with all of our listeners, and I will say now we're on our we did it. We're here. The reveal of the rankings. We called for y'all to rate rank all the games we did a deep dive on the show last year, and the way we've done for the last few years. Actually, since the very first year of the show, every single year. What am I? I'm selling a short every single year. So this year. We, in the last episode that y'all listened to, we gave our rankings, and this year we're pushed the listener rankings to this episode. So we're going to read them out in reverse chronological order. So 15th to 1. And Jake, I'll read 15 to 8, and then you can do the honors of the top. And then we
All
can
right.
just comment and kind of, provide thoughts on, roast,
Right.
whatever we'd like. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. And then, interestingly, that we had a crossover with our community. The 15 ranked game is Loot. Wait, is
That
this?
wasn't
Yeah,
ours, was Burgle Bros.
ours was Burgle Bros. Oh, sorry guys. Okay, Loot, Burgle Bros, Castle Combo, Nemalia. 11 is Dracula versus Van Helsing. 10 is Captain Flip. 9 is The Resistance. 8 is Quantum. Okay.
7 is Ego. That is interesting because certainly not everyone has played it. So we'll say that's excited to play. 6 is Azul Summer Pavilion. 5, Bunny Kingdom. 4, Ticket to Ride. 3, Five Tribes. 2, Plain Unknown. 1, T-Call. Brendan, big takeaways from the community list.
Well, our community is certainly our classic, strategy game enjoying community, ranking our number one ranked game of the year, The Resistance, arguably in both Jake and I's top 5 games of all time, as the ninth best game we covered last year. Below
It's
Azul Summer Pavilion, not even the best Azul. Like, we're
that is
joking.
disappointing. It's interesting because I'm surprised. Honestly, I'm surprised Ticket to Ride made all the way up to number 4, which like says like our listeners respect kind of like these legacy games.
Yeah. Or
But then,
maybe
which makes it even more insulting that the Resistance is down number 9, which I feel like also counts as like kind of a modern classic in the hobby.
I think that we've, in developing the show, we tended to cover strategy games, and we've drawn in folks who really enjoy strategy games, in
Yeah,
part because of the format of the show and just how we needed to logistically play a lot of games to have a lot to say about them, or play the same game a lot to say, which makes covering, Wilmot's Warehouse, say, less
it's
likely on the show.
but not impossible. I think it's interesting because with the Resistance, yes, it's not the same type of decision space as exists in T-Call, yet there is a decision space when, because you have to make decisions on who to trust, who you don't believe, who to cast your vote for. It's just a decision space is so different in what's ultimately just kind of a free flowing conversation. So I don't know. It's fascinating to me. I think if anything, there's like a ton more depth to plumb in more social games on this podcast, and maybe covering some more of those would help. I mean, I'm not saying our audience is wrong or whatever, but might change people's perspective slightly on sort of the decision space value of social games.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think you and I both really enjoy social games, so there has to be room, and maybe with more co-hosts, more potential to have episodes that reflect that, where we have all played the game a few times, and then we get the the breadth at least. The lower part of this list, Jake, to me just reflects fewer people have probably played these games. Games like
Yeah,
Nemalia that we both really enjoyed, Castle Combo that was a fairly new game, a light card game, Dracula versus Van Helsing was, a fairly niche Korean release card game that's getting a broader release, but I think even at the time of our episode was pretty hard to track down in the United States. Captain Flip, I think just our community tends to prefer heavier games than Captain Flip. I, I,
still
I
too high, honestly.
oh my gosh. Okay. But I think for me, one of the surprises here is Quantum. I guess Quantum just seems like it has a lot of randomness. I think our audience tends to not like highly random games, but I would argue Quantum is pretty strategic. That you can lose that game to a die roll, honestly. So maybe that's fair. But I don't know. Quantum's so good. What are y'all doing?
Are you surprised Five Tribes is as high as it is?
Yeah, I'm so surprised. But
Me too.
yeah,
Because I really think it
at
is
three.
a. I think that's where I had it on my list too. So I agree with that. But I'm surprised because I feel like it's genuinely a very polarizing game, and um, yeah. But I guess the people voting didn't find so. So maybe it and honestly, T Call too. Both games, and even to some extent, Planet Unknown, all games that have like really high search
Yeah.
element.
Yep.
And I wonder if part of that could be that our community more than most skews towards playing games asynchronously, I think, on Board Game Arena, and search on asynchronous play in Board Game Arena I find really fun and enjoyable, because if I'm
Yeah.
only taking a single turn in a game, it's nice if I'm actually like getting to like do something, exert a little bit of brain power. I find that fun. So maybe that's part of the thing that's showing up here too, is it's just another sort of way like our audience self-selects and is a little bit different than some these
Yeah.
games that could be more polarizing because of their like AP potential. That's getting to some extent lessened by the fact that a lot of the play that's happening, at least among our Discord members, is asynchronous play.
Yep. I'm really pleased to see Bunny Kingdom at 5. I think Bunny Kingdom is an awesome drafting game that more people should play, especially good on Board Game Arena. So yeah, thanks for the respect. And yeah,
Great.
that sums up my thoughts, Jake. I don't have a lot more takeaways there.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for voting and participating in this list. It's always really fun to see how we align or not with our audience.
And enjoy next year when you have the opportunity to rank haggis that Jake won't be covering.
Yeah, so do I just tank it or do I just skip it on that in that? No, I'm just kidding. I'll play
You,
it.
you
I'll play
you
it a
rate
couple
it
times.
based on your interest in trying the game.
I have played Haggis,
Oh
by the
yeah.
way.
Oh
Yeah.
dang,
It was
this
really
gets
confusing.
darker by the minute.
Okay, cool. Well, final thoughts on the list. I feel really satisfied with 15 as a number of games covered. It'll be
Yeah,
interesting to see, especially how things shake out with having extra host energy, how many games we cover, get to in deep dive. And also, there's some thought to people enjoying deep dive episodes. They like that double feature. Maybe they didn't love the games we picked there, but if we were covering a couple smaller games, I think as we get more efficient at doing the show too, we get a little bit better at saying what we want to say, the biggest points, the most salient points of the conversation quicker, so that maybe even if an hour worked previously, as we get better at creating the show and having these conversations, we might be able to get it done in 30 or 45 minutes. So potentially that's another thought for kind of playing with the deep dives. But I like having 15 games as a goal again this year at
yeah,
minimum.
awesome. And we're gonna get a jump start. Episode 2 of the year is going to be a deep dive on Kramer and Kiesling's Mexica, one of the Mass Trilogy games. So be on the lookout for that. If you want to give that a try, it is on Board Game Arena, I believe, still in alpha. But you come to our Discord, find a link to it in our show notes or on our website, decisionspacepodcast.com, and you can ask someone to invite you to a game, and I'm sure someone will oblige. Until next time, thank you to Hembry for our intro and outro song, Reach Out. Follow us on Instagram
Blue
and
Sky.
Blue Sky.
Mainly Blue Sky. I haven't Instagram is, not active right now. Maybe we can get our new people to breathe some life into it. if
And
you want to
maybe,
if you want to run our Instagram, reach out. Let's just say that.
okay, cool. And until next time, bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.